before I come to the different aspects related to this, I want to understand about uh, what happened to Shin Bet or other Mossad, and forget about even these. What happens to the Five Eyes? They were these all eyes focused only on what India was doing, and then which Trudeau took that example of. Where these eyes are these eyes now all bruised? I want to understand, because it's a colossal failure of the world intelligence system. Nobody could gather one thing, and obviously this sort of a attack or whatever, invasion or whatever one may wants to call it, it clearly shows that nobody was listening. Maybe everybody was listening what India was doing, what India was saying. I'm trying to understand from your point of view, because it's a 9/11 moment for Israel. It is for others also. They must look at it. How does citizens in their own countries feel safe going forward? Help us understand this particular part in brief, and then we'll come to the road ahead, exactly what this conflict means for the world.
So I will start with the Israel intelligence and their failures, and then I'll move on to Five Eyes and everyone else. Uh, a new article came out in New York Times that breaks down some of the problems. I don't know that those are the only problems. There were probably a lot more. But some of the problems included the fact that while they were monitoring the channels of communications by Hamas, they were simply not listening carefully because they have grown to understand that Hamas is not no longer a primary threat, that terrorists in West Bank are, so they shifted attention. And so what happened was Hamas apparently, possibly, engaged in deliberate disinformation. They used these public channels that are normally being monitored to claim that they're no longer interested in a war, that they're not prepared, that they're not ready. And so both the IDF and the National Security Advisor of Israel made statements based on what they heard from this commentary. They did not corroborate and verify that information. They did not follow up on it. Another problem was over-reliance on technology that was remote controlled and distant. So they thought that a combination of different signal systems and a wall would prevent terrorists from infiltrating, moved troops elsewhere. And they were kind of, first of all, they underestimated the level of force that would be used to take down the wall. Second, these systems were easily disabled by drone technology and other means. Um, Third, it was a mistake not to have human beings to respond to attack, because it. And fourth, there was also, when they did finally deliver the message, they didn't, because of the failed systems, they didn't first get the information that something was wrong in time, and by the time they got it to the superiors, those were slow to react because they simply did not believe such a thing was possible, or they were not getting all of the information at the same time. So there was this complacency, over reliance of technology, underestimation of human sources, and these human informants were also kept deliberately not informed. The information was highly compartmentalized, and uh, Hamas operatives took much higher degree of precaution, meeting face to face, uh, essentially engaging in deceptive communications, and just being much more careful. So, because Israel was not expecting, already created a certain image that they were being moderate, they also did not carefully follow every lead to make sure that they were, in fact, not lying or pretending or planning something, despite, as I mentioned previously, public indications that something was terribly wrong. These indications included um, Iran incitement to violence going back 6 or more months, interception of explosives from Turkey to Gaza only 3 weeks before the event, potentially warnings by neighboring allies such as Egypt. who may not have had the exact information, but they felt that there was a preparation for violence. And the fact that in the past attacks, Hamas has accumulated a lot of weapons. So, what were they going to do with them in general? Not to mention, there was no oversight of Qatari funding and where that was going. So, that was a colossal mistake on everyone's part. And unfortunately, US has played a part in that politically by systematically relying on Qatar as a partner, as a major non-NATO ally, whereas Qatar, whenever it acts as an intermediary and negotiator, it is not a neutral broker. It is favorable to Iran and assorted Islamist organizations. So the result is always skewed. It never works out well. We have seen what happened with the Taliban, with the Iranian nuclear deal, JCPOA, in the past. None of these things, and of course, the famous scandal with the abducted Qatari royals, which was used as an excuse to distribute billions of dollars to Qasem Soleimani, to militias in Syria and various terrorist organizations. So, whenever Qatar is involved as an intermediary, you have to be sure that problems are to follow. So, there needs to be stringent oversight, and simply didn't happen by anybody. I don't know if Israel even had the capability to do that. US probably would have, but they were not paying attention. And in fact, the Biden administration was actually also giving Gaza money, and so were the Europeans. So all of that money was going to unclear ends, and nobody was really looking. So that's as far as basic due diligence is concerned. What now? Let's take intelligence, actionable intelligence gathered by allies. So that one of the issues is that everyone was relying on surveillance, and NSA grabs huge amounts of chatter from all over the world. There is absolutely no way anyone can sift through all this information, whether Israelis or Americans, to make sense of it. Because when you have data from coming in from everywhere, it could mean anything, and it takes a long time to conduct proper analysis. So that was one problem. In general problem, before 9/11, US had problems with agencies sharing intelligence. That becomes even more difficult when you have agencies of foreign countries sharing intelligence, because nobody knows what needs to be prioritized in terms of sharing. Then there are concerns about your own security, whether you need to keep that information secret for your own thing, and sometimes you just don't know what to look for. So um, it seems to me that political issues actually played more of a role than access to intelligence, because the Biden administration was focused on placating Iran and kind of working with all these groups and creating all these deals in the Middle East with everybody and anybody. And they were not really looking at which of these actors is actually a threat. And so I think the information flow was impacted by these political frameworks.